So when I approached today's speaker about how they wanted to be introduced, she simply told me, just Bonnie Gordon. But judging from the number of people that came to see her speak today, I'd say that it's a little bit more than that. And coming from a place of humility like that, it tells to me that she recognizes the divinity in all men and women. Today's speaker, Bonnie Gordon.
Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
How's everyone doing this morning?
Excellent.
I am very grateful and very honored to be speaking here today. And on St. Patrick's Day, one of my favorite holidays.
That's better.
Oh. And I see all this green out there, which is really nice. And I wore my green to be in the spirit. And I'd like to speak about something that is very dear to my heart. It is about both loving and losing a dearly beloved soulmate. And his name is Jim. And the joy in loving him and the grief in losing him has made me a better human being. We're all born into this world feeling completely safe and loved. We're fully self-expressed. Have you ever seen a little child get upset? I saw them at Disneyland. It's so cute. They're just screaming and crying 1 minute. And then just a couple seconds later, they're just laughing and giggling. They just don't hold anything back. And they're full of wonder. I'll never forget when my daughter discovered for the first time an ant. She sat on the patio in her little diaper, mesmerized by this tiny little creature. Or when my son first discovered that water came out of a garden hose. This is the truth. The garden hose was his favorite toy all summer. He watered all the plants for me. And then it seems like life just happens. We get a little hurt. We get a little afraid. We close down that self-expression just a little bit at a time. And we might even put a little bit of armor up around our hearts to protect ourselves from what appears to be the threatening people and circumstances that a physical life can entail. Well, that happened to me. And it all started when I was 3 years old. My older sister, who was 6, took me along with her to her friend's house, and I just sat on her friend's front yard, peaceful and content, to just my tiny little 3-year-old finger just to dig it into the dirt, dig it into the ground. The sky was blue, and the birds were chirping, and everything in the universe was perfect, until my sister's friend let out an anguished scream. And she said, "Bonnie, you have destroyed our yard. When my father sees that hole you made in my yard, he is going to kill you." Well, I took it quite literally, and I was terrified. I ran home through the woods as fast as my 3-year-old legs could take me, and I hid under my bed and I wouldn't come out. My mother had to crawl under the bed and drag me out. Then there was a time when I was 5, and I was sitting in the ice hockey rink. My brother was practicing hockey. And I was bored to tears. And I sat there and I just noticed that there was 2 kids that looked my age, and my heart leaped for joy. I thought, friends to play with. Maybe this won't be so bad. So I smiled and I waited for a response. Well, they gave me a response, all right. They stuck their tongues out at me and made mean faces. I was crushed. I just burrowed my face into my mother's waist, and I cried. My mother had an illness that had her hospitalized every 2 to 3 years, and she would be gone from 6 months to 9 months, sometimes a year. And I didn't always feel safe with the strangers that my father hired to replace my mother. I missed my mommy. I didn't understand why she had gone away. And then I had my personal friendship trauma. Has anyone here had a painful loss in friendship any time during their life? It's hard to get through life without a friendship trauma. Mine was in 6th grade. And Janie and I had been friends since the 2nd grade. And the last week of 6th grade, out of the blue, she made a new best friend. Can you believe it? Well, by the time I had met Jim, I was in my 30s, raising my 2 children by myself, working 7 days a week to run my business, and life had seemed more about survival and fear than wonder and grace. But the 7 years that we experienced together transformed who I am. It wasn't the experiences themselves, it was the love that infused the experiences that altered who I am at the core of my being. You see, he loved me so completely, so unconditionally, that the first time since I was 3 years old, I felt safe on this planet. His love healed ancient wounds within me that I didn't even know I had. His wonderful male protector, provider energy allowed me to embrace my feminine side more deeply. He was a safe haven where I could be myself. He loved and accepted me exactly as I am, faults, weaknesses, flaws included. His love was the fertile ground that, like a flower in springtime, allowed me to bloom into the woman I am today. And I am still blooming. I still have so much to learn, so much to discover. Jim was no ordinary man. He was an inventor, a very successful inventor. His mind was active and creative. I spent a lot of time in his house, and he was always redecorating and resorting things all the time. It seemed the pictures on the walls, every 2 weeks they were completely rearranged. His mind just thought on a higher level. He was always looking for a better way to do things, creative ways to make a difference. He lived outside the box. He took every class I taught. One particular class, I had instructed everyone to make a sand painting. Now, a sand painting is a shamanic exercise where you go outdoors and you make a circle in the ground and you put things from nature like sticks and stones inside the circle to represent what you want to manifest and what's important in your life. Well, he called me over to see his sand painting. It was not exactly what I had instructed. His mind really did think on a higher level. His sand painting was up in a tree, perched between 2 branches, a teepee-looking masterpiece made of sticks, feathers coming out the top, berries and flowers decorated the outside. Inside there were candies and coins, stamps, even a hand-drawn picture. Jim was always giving and always helping. I could give you thousands of examples, but when I was back east visiting my sister reminded me of a cute story I want to share. She had been on a telephone conversation with Jim, and just very briefly in the conversation, she mentioned she'd been feeling a little down in the dumps, a little blue. Well, a few days later, she receives a huge box at her front doorstep filled with what she describes as a lifetime supply of pharmaceuticals for depression. True story. And I had forgotten it until she reminded me. He was a true optimist. He used to say to me, I only remember the good things in my life. I know I've had challenges, I just can't remember them. And that's the way he was with people. He only saw the good in people. One time I had a neighbor that had come into my front yard and hit one of the kids. Well, I called him up for advice, support. He suggested that I bring a loaf of bread over to this neighbor as a sign of friendship and forgiveness. It wasn't exactly what I had had in mind. But I took his advice. And that neighbor and I are still friends today. Jim was a wealthy man, but to know him, he was just a regular, genuine, down-to-earth kind of guy. He loved his $10 watch. And he would get very excited when Arby's would have their 5 for $5. We got a lot of Arby's roast beef sandwiches. But I want to share a story he told me that was really cute. He had called a big business meeting, and he sat at the head of this big board table with lots of people down the rows. And he noticed, as he looked down at all these businessmen and businesswomen, that the men seemed to be in very expensive suits. Like he guessed maybe $1,000, $2,000 suits. So he stood up and started the meeting by asking everyone how they liked his shirt. Did you guys like my shirt? Of course, everybody said yes, because he was the boss and they wanted to keep their job. So then he went on to brag that his shirt he bought on sale for $5. I want to share something that Jim wrote. And those are my notes on the back, by the way. They're pictures. The natural condition of our spiritual being is love. Love is all-inclusive. Our several and separate existences live within the oneness of love. We are all part of one great spiritual heart. This one spiritual heart, like our individual hearts, beats to a life-sustaining rhythm. When we act with love, we feel no separation of self or others. The dancer and the dance become one, effortlessly moving in perfect rhythm. So I would love and wish I could say that everything was always perfect between Jim and I. But we could push each other's buttons. Has anybody here ever been in a relationship where it brought up some stuff? Oh my God, I'm so glad I'm not alone. That's good. I'm glad I'm not the only one. Relationships can bring up stuff. Living life as a human being can bring up stuff. Being a spiritual person doesn't mean we don't have stuff. It means we're on a compassionate journey to heal our stuff. Well, Jim was better at dealing with upset than me. If I got upset about something, he never abandoned me. He might have gotten a little upset too, but he always stayed with me until we worked it all out. I can see him now, smiling at me, telling me how cute I am when my red hair catches on fire. Unfortunately, I was not always as generous with him. Often, when he would get upset, I would run away like a scared rabbit. One such time, I was driving home, and I was asking myself, how did I attract this reactive man into my life? Yeah, there are no accidents who we attract into our life. And those closest to us are our most perfect mirrors. And we don't always like what we see in the mirror. So I was driving home completely blind to the projection that he was so kindly reflecting to me, unaware that running off in a tizzy, withholding my love and shutting him out, was a huge reaction. Well, when I got home that day, my daughter reminded me of what I had been telling my kids their entire life. That those who seem the least lovable need the most love. And that people can be only either one of two things, either loving or calling for love. I had forgotten to practice what I had been preaching my entire life with this man I was so in love with. I called him up right away, and I apologized. I promised him that I would never run away again. Maybe into the next room. But never far and never for long. I began growing up that day. I made a commitment to myself to love as an adult, to remain fully present and non-reactive even when someone is upset with me. I forgot what I was going to say. Hold on one second. Let me look at my pictures. Oh, yes. That doesn't mean that I can't say no, and it doesn't mean that I'm a doormat. But I can begin shifting all through my life, and I am still doing it today. I have not mastered this, but I shift from being the defensive child who blames and falls to being the adult who responds to a call for love with compassion. It's funny, because when someone you love passes, those pet peeves, those little annoying things, they become endearing. Nothing changes on the outer, but your interpretation changes. One of the things that used to upset me about Jim, that is now endearing, was how bold he was. This man was unstoppable. We would be driving down the road, and if he wanted to make a U-turn, the medium strip was only there to assist him. True. We traveled, and we would be in an airport, and if he had a question, he would march right up to the customer service agent, completely ignoring the people waiting patiently for their turn. True. Yeah. He owned a piece of property alongside a mountain, and he loved to drive me up his mountain. And if he saw a hiker walking on his four-wheel drive dirt road, well, he'd let him hike, but he'd always have to stop and let them know, just let them know that they are trekking on his territory. When I would see hikers up ahead, I would say silently to myself, please don't stop, keep going, please don't stop. He would always stop, roll down his window. I would sink down in my seat just a little bit. Today, what I would give to have another ride up that mountain with him. I wouldn't care how many times he stopped. Of all our grand and wonderful adventures, his greatest gift to me was in his passing. I learned so much from losing his physical form. I love and accept the people in my life exactly as they are. I know if I lose them, I'll miss everything about them. Everything will be endearing. I don't need to change people anymore. I don't take the people in my life for granted. I've learned to forgive more easily. Everything is interpretation. Everything that someone says or does, if it hurts me, it's my interpretation of what was said or done. And it is always easy to forgive a call for love. I still worry sometimes. And I know that you cannot worry and believe that all is in divine right order at the same time. Those two thought systems cannot coexist. But since Jim, I worry a lot less. Because the abundance of synchronicities that weave themselves into our experiences, even after he passed, have taught me to shift from believing in a chaotic and fearful universe where I have to control and force outcomes, to believing in a universe that is divinely orchestrated, where I am guided moment by moment, trusting, unattached and free, as I watch with wonder my life unfold miraculously before me. I have learned that you cannot ever really lose anyone. I heard thousands of times that the soul is eternal, and I believed it fully and wholeheartedly. But then to have a very real connection with Jim, who had passed, to feel him with me, to feel his presence and his love surround me, transformed that mere belief into a deep inner knowing. Jim is not gone. He lives forever within my heart. The love that is shared between souls is eternal. It is the only thing that lasts forever. Everything in this physical universe will someday be gone. Maybe in a year, maybe in 1,000,000,000,000 years. But even those mountains, our homes, our cars, our bodies, even our cute dresses, they will all be gone. And this has helped me to value more deeply that which is eternal. The invisible loving bonds between my heart and yours. The relationships in my life. While also being more present to the importance of that which is physically in front of me, right here, right now. Because it could be gone tomorrow. When someone dies, it feels like you have also died. It feels like a piece of your soul is gone. But then eventually, and more important, inevitably, you come back. And to be so blessed to have the experience that something so painful, that felt so devastating, hasn't altered or destroyed the truth within you one iota. It's like opening up the floodgates of your soul, where you become freer and more vibrantly alive than you have ever been before. You realize you have a choice with everything in life, whether it's the death of a loved one, whether it's a difficult breakup, whether you lose your home, your job, your health, whether you've been victimized, abused, or persecuted. You can choose to allow that pain and that grief to close you down, to harden you. And you can become a resigned, guarded, and bitter human being. Or you can choose to allow that pain and that grief to open you up, to soften you, and you can become a kinder, more sensitive, more understanding, forgiving, bold and courageous, passionate and joyful human being. I have loved, and I have lost, and I have grieved, and I am still here, happier and more alive than I have ever been. Maybe, after all, life does have a perfect design, and all those experiences from our childhood on that had us feel victimized, afraid, insecure, unloved, can deepen and enrich who we are. Maybe they can help us come around full circle, and we can become again like little children, fully self-expressed as our wide open hearts dance and play upon this planet in a state of wonder and grace. Yet now, as wise, compassionate, loving, authentic, and empowered adults, Jim taught me the greatest lesson of all. It wasn't him that made me feel secure and safe and happy. It dwells within us. That happiness and that security dwells within each and every one of us. And it is ever present, and it is an infinite supply. And nothing that happens to us in this temporary, physical universe can diminish or change the wholly pure, infinitely powerful essence that we all are, nothing can threaten the all-loving, permanent, divine magnificence that you truly and eternally are. Thank you.
First words is, then lest God shall get, then lest not shall lose. So the Bible says, and we know it still is news. Your mama may have, and your papa he may have. God bless the child that's got his own. That's got his own. Rich relations may get you just a crust of bread or such. You can help yourself, just don't take too much. Your mama may have, and your papa he may have.